Yo, what is up? Hi, welcome to today's stream. I just want to take the chance and give my thoughts on the first round of the NFL draft that happened last night. Even though I'm not really refreshed, maybe you can see in the background. I got to bed this morning at 7 a.m. Woke up an hour later to noises of hammering and grinding because in another apartment in my building they put in new windows, and apparently on the side of the building that my bedroom is on. So I moved to the living room where it was a bit quieter and slept on my sofa. Fun! And now I am still very tired, but let's go. Yeah, Detroit Lions made two weird picks. I think two, although I liked one much better than the other. But let's get to that a bit later and have a look at the draft picks and the draft trades. I am quite prepared to have a look at everything. So, first overall pick in this draft, it was Bryce Young, quarterback from Alabama. I am a bit scared of Bryce Young, I have to say. He does have potential. Obviously, he can be a franchise quarterback. But when I watched him play last year, I got very much the feeling that he is not a very good quarterback under pressure, because basically every time when the opponent was able to generate pressure on Alabama, those were pretty low scoring games, and his accuracy went pretty bad pretty quickly whenever he was pressured, whenever he had to move outside of the pocket, whenever he had to make a quick decision. He really struggled to connect on his passes. He does have a lot of ability to improvise, to extend plays. Often shouldn't extend plays as long as he did at Alabama. He held on to the ball quite often very long when he maybe should have thrown it more quickly. Then again, he might become a very good quarterback in the NFL, but I had my reservations. I still have my reservations about Bryce Young. He was not my QB1 in this draft. But let's hope that he can lead the Carolina Panthers into the promised land, at least for the fans of the Carolina Panthers. I don't wish him misfortune. Definitely not. Second overall, CJ Stroud to the Houston Texans. In my opinion, definitely the right pick. CJ Stroud is my QB1 in this draft. Very pro-ready, very poised, very accurate passer. Can execute a pro-style offense very well. And is also, or at least has the ability to also pick up yards with his legs, although he didn't do that much at Ohio State. His upside isn't as high as that of other quarterbacks in this class, but then again, he's basically the safe pick in this draft class. And especially with the Texans, there were a lot of rumors that the Texans might not take a quarterback at second overall, that they might take Will Anderson Jr., the edge rusher from Alabama, who they did take one pick later. But let's finish my thoughts on CJ Stroud. And maybe wait until the 12th overall pick, or maybe even later, to take a quarterback, or not at all, and basically wait until next year. But yeah, in my opinion, that would have been a mistake. because on one hand, I do like CJ Stroud as a quarterback. Do think he has very high potential, has the potential to become a franchise quarterback, a winning quarterback in the NFL. And in the NFL, you never know. I mean, the Texans basically were planning to get the first overall pick this year. They failed to do that, even though they had a pretty bad roster. But in the end, the Bears were able to basically outsuck them with the Texans winning their last regular season game. So you don't really know where the Texans will pick next year. So there would have been the risk that they won't be in a position to draft a quarterback high next year. So take the quarterback now. As I said multiple times now, I do believe CJ Stroud has the potential to become a really good quarterback in the NFL. So take him, get your franchise quarterback, at least potential franchise quarterback, and move on. And moving on they did by trading up from the 12th overall pick to from the 12th overall pick to the 3rd overall pick, giving up their second round pick, the second pick in the second round, and their first and third round picks next year. And they got also back the 4th round pick from the Cardinals this year. Pretty steep price for a non-quarterback. One could say this is almost as good as a first round pick very early in the second round. And I mean, obviously, I do love Will Anderson. I do love Will Anderson. He is one of the top 2 players in my mind in this draft. The other being Jalen Carter, who slid a bit, probably because of character concern issues. And DeMeco Ryans, the new head coach of the Texans, probably identified Will Anderson as one player that he definitely needs or definitely wants to have to give the Texans a very valuable piece in their defense. And Will Anderson very likely will be a very valuable piece for their defense. And basically giving up this much draft capital by the Texans means that they believe that Anderson, compared to whoever else they could have gotten at 12, gives the Texans a much higher floor. Basically makes the entire roster or at least the entire defense that much better, to give the Texans a lot more wins. I mean, in the end, in the NFL, everything is about winning. So that, they basically say, we don't need our second round pick. We don't need our first and third round pick next year. Probably even hoping that their first round pick next year won't be a very high one. That's interesting, given that they will be playing with a rookie quarterback. But hey, crazier things have happened. So I do like the pick. Obviously, at third, Will Anderson, basically a no-brainer, one of the 2 best players in the draft and the one without concerns about his character. Draft him here, get a really good playmaker for your defense, someone who can get to the quarterback, someone who's also very, very good at defending the run, very complete edge player, and good pick. You can question the price for the uptrade, but in the end, they wanted a star for their defense, and they at least very likely got a star for their defense. Next up, the Indianapolis Colts needed a quarterback very badly. They tried over the last year to go the veteran route ever since Andrew Luck retired. To go the veteran route, I believe drafting a quarterback in the 4th round was the highest that they tried getting someone young in, with a quarterback from Washington that I can't quite remember the name of. I'm sorry. So I'm tired, and as usual, I am not very well at remembering names in the first place. So now they got Anthony Richardson, the quarterback with the highest ceiling in this draft class and many other draft classes. So he could become one of the best quarterbacks in this draft. He's basically, his upside is at the very top. Very top. Hold on. Should move the camera a bit. The very top. Okay. Should move the maybe next stream I will zoom a bit out on in the camera so that you can see a bit more of me. Yeah. So basically he has the chance to get to the level of where basically right now only Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen are. Really strong arm, great athleticism, but very inconsistent in his accuracy. And yeah, there's always the risk that a quarterback won't overcome that. Obviously, the Colts, drafting Anthony Richardson 4th overall, believe that they are able to coach him to become a more accurate passer, a consistently accurate passer who doesn't just show flashes of the brilliance that he definitely has in him, but shows this amazing potential that he has on a regular basis. In my opinion, definitely worth the risk here. I didn't have Anthony Richardson rated as highly to draft him 4th overall. But with quarterbacks, it's always about the interviews. It's always about the workouts. It's always about being convinced that he will be a leader for your football team, of being convinced that he will be able to improve significantly, in his case, significantly. So, that he can become the leader. And if the Colts are convinced that Richardson will become this great, consistent quarterback, then drafting him 4th overall, definitely not a mistake. And even if it doesn't work out, just taking the chance on Richardson here, I believe, is worth it. 5th overall, the Seattle Seahawks drafted Devon Witherspoon, cornerback from Illinois. Not really the cornerback that the Seahawks would have drafted a few years ago. He is... That's annoying that you can't open it in a new tab. He's only 5'11 and a half, has only 31 1/4 inch arms. So yeah, but he's a good cornerback. That's on the other side. Last year they drafted Tariq Woolen in the 5th round, if I remember correctly. He basically was a old school Seahawks quarterback, and when I say old school, I mean 2010 or the 2010s. And the style of defense that they played, they are very athletic, very long cornerback. And he did work out. Now they draft Devon Witherspoon to play opposite of him, to get a really good cornerback duo for their defense. Definitely makes sense. Definitely is a position of value that you can draft in the top 10. So also a pick that I do like. At least if you're, and the Seahawks obviously weren't convinced that Jalen Carter is a person that you want in your locker room. Next up, we had another trade. The Cardinals, traded down from 3 to 12, and then they traded back up. Other direction. They traded back up with the Lions from 12 to 6. They gave up their 2nd round pick, so in this trade, they got the pick 33 from the Texans, and they gave up 34, their own pick, in the 2nd round, and a 5th rounder got back a third rounder to draft Paris Johnson, offensive tackle from Ohio State. Obviously, the Cardinals wanted to improve their offensive line. They had identified Paris Johnson as the number one player to do that. He was the first offensive lineman taken in this draft. In my mind, it was a bit early for Paris Johnson here. I only had a mid-first round grade on him, but also on my board, he was the highest rated offensive lineman. So I can understand drafting him first, and they drafted ahead of the Raiders. They drafted ahead of the Bears, who then later traded back one pick, ahead of the Titans, 3 teams with needs in the offensive line. So Cardinals drafted ahead of those 3 teams, especially the Raiders, probably believing that if they didn't do that, Paris Johnson might be gone, or maybe even a lot more offensive tackles were gone. And sorry, I have to... How do I do that? Trying to ban someone from my chat. How do you do that? I hate spam bots. Here you do that. Okay, one more thing that I learned. Okay. Paris Johnson was, something the Cardinals needed. better protection for quarterback Kyler Murray. And definitely someone with franchise left tackle upside, but still a bit raw. Could still need a bit of work. Is a bit of a risky pick by the Cardinals here, and might work out, might not work out. But once again, the Cardinals obviously are convinced that Paris Johnson will become a very, very good left tackle in the NFL, and if he does, the trade up was worth it, and the 6th overall pick was worth it. Then after that, the Las Vegas Raiders drafted Tyree Wilson, edge rusher from Texas Tech. Also, obviously, they weren't convinced that they should draft Jalen Carter and went with Wilson. Very high upside edge rusher, super long, very long arms, good athleticism. Someone who really has the chance to become one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. Also be a very good run defender, not just get after the quarterback. And in my opinion, a player worthy of a top 10 selection. So no complaints here. The Raiders needed better pass rush. Chandler Jones, who they signed last offseason, didn't work out, at least not so far. And now they get a young guy in Wilson who can learn from Chandler Jones and complement Max Crosby, who is a very good edge rusher, but obviously you can never have enough of those. So in my mind, a good pick here. Next up, Atlanta Falcons, Bijan Robinson, the running back from Texas. I don't like the pick. I am not as convinced as others evaluating the players that Bijan Robinson will be a very good running back in this. I do believe he will be a very good running back, but I don't think he is as special as some people say he is. Yeah, I have. I don't really want to say concerns, but I would have wanted him to play more consistent. There just were times where he went down a bit too easily, where sometimes he just runs through tackles, pulls defenders behind him, and other times he just goes down by a simple shoestring tackle or ankle tackle. And the other thing, or two other things, one thing, he just wasn't decisive enough for me in many occasions, where he just waited and waited for holes to open up, just too much dancing around behind the offensive line instead of just going for it, hitting the hole, and going full speed. And the other thing, I don't really thought I didn't really think that he was, or I would have wanted him to be more explosive overall as a running back. He does have a decent get off, but just compared to other really good running backs in the last drafts, I preferred Saquon Barkley over him. I preferred Todd Gurley a few years back over him. Even Ezekiel Elliott I would have preferred over him. Bijan Robinson does have some special traits, especially in the passing game. Really good receiver, a good blocker, but I don't think he was a running back worthy of a top 10 selection, especially with the devaluation of running backs in today's NFL, where I feel a running back has to be super special to be a top 10 pick, and I do think that Bijan Robinson is very good, but not special as a running back. So I am critical of this pick. And then let's go to the next pick. The Philadelphia Eagles traded up one spot from 10 to 9, giving up a 4th round pick next year in 2024 to draft Jalen Carter. Basically, it was reported before the draft that the Eagles were hoping that Jalen Carter would slide so that they could draft him. And when he was there at 9, they might have been scared that the Bears might take him. He would have fit nicely into their defense. They might have been scared that someone else traded in front of them, maybe even more likely to draft Jalen Carter. So they themselves offered the Bears, and the Bears accepted. Sorry, bit of a burp there. And traded up to draft Jalen Carter, just based off the player, just based off what he can do on the football field. Definitely Jalen Carter, a very, very, very good prospect. As I said earlier, one of the top 2 in this draft with Will Anderson. And the big question is just, what about his character? What about his work ethic? He underperformed at the Combine. Then a few days later, or I don't quite remember, like 1.5, 2 weeks after the Combine at his pro day, he came in even overweight. He basically, between the Combine and his pro day, I believe he gained like 15 pounds. So there are question marks also, maybe even of the how to say it, of the legal kind. He might have been involved in a, I don't know if it was hit and run, or at least he might have been involved in a fatal car crash back in January, I believe. So yeah, might not be the easiest person to work with, but super talented, super disruptive interior rusher. As I said, based off the player, getting him at 9th is a steal if all the character stuff works out. And even trading up one spot, investing a future 4th round pick, I don't mind, just based on the player. Then the Chicago Bears drafted Darnell Wright, the offensive tackle by Tennessee. I didn't see that coming. I had Darnell Wright, I believe in the mid-second round. Let me check. Yeah, I had graded him mid-second round. I thought that he might basically be a first round pick in the 20s. I didn't think that he would be a top 10 pick. Obviously, the Bears want to get their offense to be more power run. Something obviously with Justin Fields as the quarterback does make sense. But then again, Darnell Wright, ahead of all the other offensive tackles that also were available, I don't know. He does have a lot of upside. He is a good athlete. He does have great size. And he is, for a player his size, he is really decent in pass protection. And he might prove me wrong. I don't know, but it felt a bit early for Darnell Wright here. Next up, the Tennessee Titans drafted Peter Skoronski. Yeah, just a good pick. I mean, Peter Skoronski is a good offensive lineman. He can play tackle, might be a better guard, or probably is a better guard in the NFL, but the Titans also might have a need at tackle with Taylor Lewan leaving the team. They signed Andre Dillard, but then again, Andre Dillard so far has not proven that he can be a franchise left tackle. That might be the chance for Skoronski. Otherwise, he plays at guard and is a very high quality guard for the Titans, who just needed upgrade across almost the entirety of their offensive line. So yeah, just makes sense for the Titans to go with Skoronski here. Then, big swing for the fences, as the baseball fan would say. Jahmyr Gibbs goes 12th overall to the Detroit Lions. Jahmyr Gibbs, one of my favorite players in this draft. I had him, I'd say, more in the 18 to 20 range of this draft. So 12 is slightly early for me. But he's super dynamic, super athletic, great receiver out of the backfield. So maybe the Lions were like, okay, all the receivers suck this year, let's just get Jahmyr Gibbs. And he is someone who you can line up at receiver, have him playing out of the slot, have him playing outside. Although he would have to work at his route running if you do that. But he's just a player who can basically always score a touchdown when the ball is in his hand. He's just so fast, so dynamic, so quick, so elusive, and yeah, great offensive weapon for the Lions. Then Lucas Van Ness to the Green Bay Packers. The Packers continue to hate their quarterbacks, so it was not an Aaron Rodgers thing. They didn't just hate him, they hate Jordan Love as well. Not drafting a receiver with all the receivers still on the board. Going with Lucas Van Ness, who I'm really not that high on, I have to say. He does have super high upside. He has great, basically height, weight, speed. Although his athleticism, so he's not a speedster or anything. He is quick, he is explosive, he is strong, but super unrefined as a player, doesn't really know how to use his hands, not really that productive at Iowa. So I do have a lot of concerns with Lucas Van Ness. He has a really high upside, and obviously the Packers are convinced that they can coach this upside out of him and get him where he can be. And I mean, they and Lucas Van Ness might prove me wrong, but as I said, I have my concerns with Lucas Van Ness. And let's see. Then we had another trade. The Steelers traded up from 17 to 14 with the Patriots, giving up a 4th round pick to basically get the last of the super convincing offensive linemen in this draft, with Paris Johnson already gone, Daniel Wright already gone, Peter Skoronski gone, and then Broderick Jones. Also not a finished product, but another offensive tackle who does have franchise left tackle upside, who does have the length, who does have the athleticism, but still a bit inconsistent, still has a way to go, but in the middle of the first round, in my mind, decent value, and especially given the need for the Steelers, good that they traded up in front, especially in front of the Jets, because they were linked with offensive linemen throughout the entire draft season. And yeah, got to take the last of the good offensive linemen in this draft class. Once again, I won't criticize the uptrade because it was probably needed to get ahead of the Jets, and also the Commanders could have taken him. And Broderick Jones, in my mind, I had a mid-first round grade on him, so at 14, also a player I won't criticize taking him here. Then next up, the New York Jets went into panic mode because their offensive lineman was taken ahead of him, and obviously I'm joking. They very likely were prepared for that situation, that all the offensive linemen were gone, but I still question them taking Will McDonald this early. Yes, he does have a lot of upside, but I really didn't like his tape. He very often had problems beating his blockers. And yeah, I mean, the Iowa State defense didn't do him any favors, having him playing 5 technique very often, having him 2-gaping very often, with Will McDonald being 239 pounds. not a great idea, but if you see 6'4" is great height for an edge rusher. 34 7/8 inch arms is very good for an edge rusher. He didn't test pretty much at all at the combine, but he is a good athlete. And yeah, once again, he might prove me wrong, but I feel that he is too raw to take him this early in the draft. Then the Washington Commanders draft Emmanuel Forbes, and I don't know why. I mean, I understand why. Emmanuel Forbes is a great athlete. Emmanuel Forbes had so much ball production, set a new NCAA record for pick sixes, and if I remember correctly, had 14 interceptions total while playing at Mississippi State. But he came to the combine with 166 pounds, which I mean, he's so thin. And obviously that will hurt him playing run support in the NFL. Obviously in the NFL, receivers are way more physical than they are in college. And I don't really know if he can handle it. I mean, ball protection, turnovers are always important in the NFL. So he might be a valuable piece for the defense, but I'm afraid that especially early in his career, hoping that he can bulk up to get at least into the 180 range, playing there, that early he will get burned quite regularly, quite often, just by receivers being more physical than him, knowing how to use their physicality better than college receivers, obviously. Yeah, super risky pick by the Commanders here. I don't know if it will work out. The Commanders obviously are convinced that it will work out, but I don't know. And then the New England Patriots, after having traded down from 14 to 17, got Christian Gonzalez, cornerback from Oregon, who, many thought would be a top 10 pick. I was not as convinced as many others. I'm more comfortable with him at 17 than I would have been in the top 10. On the other hand, Christian Gonzalez is what is he, 6'1", 6'2"? I believe, 6'1", which is a good height for a cornerback. And usually cornerbacks that are as tall as him aren't as fluid in their movement as him. He's quick, he's fast, he moves, he just moves so well. He's so smooth in all of his movements, and a player with a super high upside who's very sticky in man coverage. I understand, or I understood why people thought he might be a top 10 pick. Once again, I had my concerns with, I mean, his run defense is just horrible. He does not want to defend against the run. He really does not want to defend against the run. I would have liked him to be a bit stronger, and in man coverage he was just too grabby for me too often. These were my concerns with Gonzalez, but once again, super high upside player. He can become such a good cornerback in the NFL, and the Patriots drafting him here, in my mind, a very good pick. Then the Detroit Lions drafted Jack Campbell, and I believe that this is the one pick that the least people understood last night. I was lower on Jack Campbell. I only had him in the third round as many others, but I don't think many people had him going in the first round. He is quite tall for a linebacker. He is 6'5", if I remember. Yeah, he is 6'5", and with being 6'5", he just is stiff. He's not really fluid in his movements. He's not really quick. He is really good playing zone coverage. I wouldn't put him in man coverage. He is really good attacking downhill. I would have liked his play recognition to be a bit better, which is why I only had him in the third round. I would have liked him to be more instinctive, to anticipate offensive plays better. I mean, Lions head coach Dan Campbell always wants toughness. He wants his players to bite kneecaps. That is Jack Campbell. And I mean, Dan Campbell, Jack Campbell also fits. But yeah, he was not my number one off-ball linebacker in this draft, and I didn't have an off-ball linebacker with a first-round grade, so Jack Campbell, in my mind, way too early here at 18, although the Lions had a need at linebacker, and Jack Campbell obviously has the potential to become a defensive leader for them, to become a centerpiece of their defense. But if they had drafted him in the second round, I would have liked the pick way more. Next up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers draft Calijah Kancey, interior defensive lineman from Pitt. Once again, for me, a bit early. I do see his explosiveness, his quickness, his ability to disrupt the pocket, to get into the backfield, to make sacks, to make tackles for loss, but his hand usage isn't as consistent as I would have liked. He obviously is undersized. He doesn't have great strength, although he's often able to use his leverage to basically overpower offensive linemen that are stronger than him. But I mean, the comparisons between him and Aaron Donald, another interior defensive lineman from Pittsburgh, who became an absolute superstar in the NFL, who is a similar player type as Kancey, but then again, Aaron Donald, when he came out of college, just was a different kind of beast than Calijah Kancey is. Kancey does have his value in the NFL. Obviously, pass rush disruption is key for the front seven, but I am at least somewhat afraid that he might never be more than a situational player, a rotational player, and that he will never be an every down defensive lineman, which in my mind would then mean that drafting him 19th is too early. Which is why I had a second round grade on Kancey. But then again, he can become a very valuable piece for the Buccaneers defense, but there are question marks. There's risk involved with him. Next up, no risk involved here. The Seattle Seahawks draft Jackson Smith-Njigba, wide receiver from Ohio State. One of the most pro-ready wide receivers coming out of college in recent years. Very good route runner, very quick, very, very good movement skills, very sure-handed. I believe fits nicely into the Seahawks receiving core with Tyler Lockett, with DK Metcalf. Being the slot receiver in that offense, getting a lot of underneath targets in the short to intermediate range. Yeah, should be a really, really nice addition to the Seahawks. I really like this pick here. Then, another pick I really like, although others don't as much. Quentin Johnston, next wide receiver from TCU, goes to the Los Angeles Chargers. I really like Quentin Johnston. He was my wide receiver number 1 in this draft class. And I do think he gives the Chargers someone or an element that they needed, a big play weapon for their offense to give Justin Herbert another target, to Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, who can play on the outside, who can catch and run, who can go downfield, who can be a vertical threat, who can be a jump ball threat. I really like Quentin Johnston, and I really like this pick here. Next up, the Baltimore Ravens draft Zay Flowers. We had a bit of a wide receiver run here. Zay Flowers from Boston College going to the Ravens. They yesterday just re-signed Lamar Jackson, or gave him a contract extension, and then gave him another wide receiver to play with. Zay Flowers, I was a bit lower on him. Also only had him in the second round because I really didn't like his route running at Boston College, but he has very good to great, let's say, athleticism. He is not a super speedster with 4.42 speed, but he's quick. He has really good movement skills. He can become a very, very good route runner. Not saying that he can't. Also, he has to become more physical. That's the other critique that I had for Zay Flowers. really had problems with cornerbacks playing physical in man coverage to disrupt his catches, to disrupt his routes. Really has to work on that, but also a player with high upside just because of his explosiveness, because of his quickness, because of his speed, and can become a valuable weapon for the Ravens and for Lamar Jackson. And then the fourth wide receiver in a row, Jordan Addison from USC goes to the Minnesota Vikings, and I really like the fit here. Jordan Addison, a technician, really good route runner, not as physical, but should fit nicely into the offense that lost the wide receiver whose name I once again have forgotten. Hold on, he's now playing for the Panthers, so I can look it up. Adam Thielen, thank God for our lads. So, in my mind, he isn't. So Adam Thielen is a bigger, stronger player, but Jordan Addison is a similar player type. Let's say it like that. So he should be able to fit into this role, and I feel at 23 also really good value, because I thought Jordan Addison deserved to be a first round pick. Next up, the New York Giants traded up, I believe, one spot. Yeah, from 25 to 24, just to make sure that no one else trades in front of them. And maybe to prevent the Jaguars from taking Banks themselves. Gave up a 5th and a 7th round pick. That's, in my mind, totally okay to trade up one spot in the first round. And they drafted Deonte Banks, cornerback from Maryland. I really do like this pick. Deonte Banks on my board, cornerback number 2 in this draft. Good size, really good athleticism. I really liked his tape, how he plays football, and I think for the Giants that this just a great pick, just a really good cornerback that they are getting here with high upside, but also, as I said, really like how he plays football already. So a somewhat high floor that I also see for Deonte Banks. So yeah. As a Cowboys fan, I hate this pick because I do believe this might be my favorite draft pick of the entire first round here. Deonte Banks to the Giants. Next up, the Buffalo Bills also traded up 2 spots from 27 to 25, giving up a 4th round pick, because apparently they very much wanted to draft Dalton Kincaid and very much were afraid that the Cowboys would draft them if they didn't trade up. Dalton Kincaid, I was surprised by the pick, not because I don't think Dalton Kincaid shouldn't be a first round pick, but I didn't believe that the Bills have that big of a need at tight end. Because, where are we here? Dawson Knox played fairly decent in recent years, but apparently with all the receivers, and this might be why, with all these receivers being gone and Buffalo really wanting to get another pass catcher into their offense, they were like, okay, more 2 tight end sets then. And yeah, might be their reasoning. Dalton Kincaid, probably the best receiving tight end in this draft class, has still room to grow as a blocker, but as I said earlier, I don't mind the value here in the first round, at the end of the first round, getting Kincaid. There are injury concerns with him, but obviously Buffalo doesn't mind, or at least believes that those are behind him. Then my Dallas Cowboys draft Mazi Smith. For me, also a pick out of bit out of nowhere, because I believe since like the 90s, somewhere in the 90s, the Cowboys haven't drafted a defensive tackle in the first round. Just never really valued that position as much. Usually, I believe Tristan Hill in the second round was the highest drafted interior defensive lineman in recent years. I didn't have Mazi Smith as high. I had him in the early third round. On the other hand, I won't criticize picks as much if they are of players that bring high upside, because evaluating players with high upside, and Mazi Smith does have incredibly high upside. He's very strong, also very athletic. Those players are hard to evaluate just based off tape. Obviously, the Cowboys did have workouts with Smith. He was one of their 30 visits this year. So I am willing to trust that Mazi Smith won't just be a really good run defender, something that they really needed for their defense. They did re-sign Jonathan Hankins. But on the other hand, last year showed that when they traded for Hankins, how much the defense improved. So having this big run defending one technique in their defense really makes the defense better. And Mazi Smith, as I said, high upside player with his athleticism, should be also able to improve his pass rush. And yeah, it's a risky pick in my mind, as I said, because based off his tape, I wouldn't say that he deserved to be a first round pick, but he has the upside to become a really great defensive tackle. So we'll have to see. Then the Jacksonville Jaguars drafted Anton Harrison, offensive tackle from Oklahoma. Also a pick that I was surprised by. Cam Robinson is suspended, their left tackle. I don't know for how long, and I don't want to look it up now. So Cam Robinson will be suspended to begin this season. And they also lost their right tackle, Jawan Taylor, in free agency. They drafted in 2021 Walker Little, the offensive tackle from Stanford, in the second round, who is scheduled to take over the right tackle spot from Jawan Taylor. And I mean, before the suspension for Cam Robinson, obviously Walker Little and Cam Robinson were penciled in as the starters. Right now, Anton Harrison might be the starting left tackle. I obviously don't know if the coaching staff in Jacksonville might be a bit disappointed by the development of Walker Little. So that might also be the reason for Anton Harrison being the pick here, that they believe that he can take over at the right tackle spot. A bit early for me also, Anton Harrison here. I had him late second, but also he is a player with good upside. With let me check that I don't say something stupid, but I do believe he has, yes, for an offensive tackle, quite decent athleticism. He isn't very tall. 6'4" is okay for an offensive tackle, but his arm length, 34 1/8 inch, is pretty good for an offensive tackle. So size-wise, there aren't that many concerns, but as I said, still a bit raw, but a player with high upside. And if the Jaguars are convinced that he can become a really good player, then this might become a really good pick. Next up, the Cincinnati Bengals drafted Myles Murphy, basically the not upside pick, although he does have a fairly decent upside. Me and a lot of other people were surprised that Myles Murphy fell as far. He isn't, at least right now, he isn't that great of a pass rusher. His pass rush moves are not that well developed, to say the least. He plays with great effort. He has power. He has length. He isn't a great athlete, but a good athlete. I mean, he is a bit bigger of an edge rusher with 6'5" to 68, and okay, didn't test at the combine. On tape, he is a good athlete, not a great athlete. But then again, with all his tools combined, his strength, his length, his athleticism, still has a fairly decent upside. As I said, primarily needs to work on his hand usage, on his pass rush moves. Can become a very good player for the Bengals, and also fits very nicely with what the Bengals for many years basically now do at defensive end. Not just getting speed rushers, but getting or searching for complete players who can rush the quarterback and play the run as well. And yeah, based on value, I thought also this is a really good pick by the Bengals. Then another good pick, as I thought, New Orleans Saints draft Bryan Bresee, next Clemson defensive lineman, going here back to back, is someone who quite often I thought might be the pick for the Saints whenever I basically in my mind went through the first round and going through the players that might be selected. Quite often thought that Bryan Bresee might be a good fit for the Saints, and he ended up being the pick for the Saints. Not very productive in college, I have to say. Was injured quite often, had struggles personally, nothing bad character-wise, but his sister died of cancer last year, and let's just say around that time his production on the field was pretty bad. But late season you could see him playing better, and he also has just great upside, very nice size for an interior defensive lineman, very good athleticism, strong player, and yeah, if it all comes together, can become a very, very good player for the Saints. Like this pick. So I liked this pick. Then the Philadelphia Eagles continue their plan to become the Philadelphia Bulldogs. Last year drafting Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean from Georgia. This year drafting Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, the edge rusher. I love this pick, or as a Cowboys fan, I absolutely hate this pick, because Nolan Smith I had with a mid-first round grade, just super dynamic, super fast, super quick, just great bender, gets to the quarterback quickly, and even, I mean, he is undersized for an edge rusher. No, come on. He is only 6'2", 238, but he plays so much stronger than you would think with his 238. Just a player type, really Micah Parsons. Put him at the edge, put him at off-ball linebacker, let him play football, and also great situation for him going to the Eagles with Hassan Reddick on the team. Also, just body type wise, 6'1", 240. Someone who can probably teach Nolan Smith a few tips and tricks how to play the position in the NFL at that size. Love that pick. Yeah, I do think either him or Deonte Banks, my two favorite picks of this first year's draft class. Then the last pick in the first round belonged to the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, and they draft Felix Anudike-Uzomah from Kansas State, edge rusher. After the draft, from Cowboys beat writers, there came rumors that the Chiefs actually offered to trade up with the Cowboys because they wanted to draft Mazi Smith here at 26. Obviously, we don't know if that is true, and we probably never will know if that was true. So they had to settle. Then took probably best player on their board when they were on the clock with Anudike-Uzomah. I don't like him as a run defender. I do really like him as a pass rusher. I had a second round grade on him, but then again, okay, maybe I do mind him taking in the first round. He's, as I said, pretty much a one-dimensional player right now. Maybe the Chiefs are convinced that he will become a much better run defender in the future. Then obviously this pick is worth it. As I said, right now he is a pure pass rusher, a rotational player, situational player. He does know how to get to the quarterback, probably the best flatter in this draft, so the best edge rusher to bend and flat and get to the quarterback the quickest way possible. But then again, I don't really like his run defense. He's a pretty bad run defender right now. So in my mind, if he doesn't improve his run defense, this might have been a bit early for him. These are my thoughts on the picks in the first round. Next night, or this night at 0:30, 12:30, I don't really... 1:30. We will continue our live coverage of the draft if you want to watch it. Only for Germans. I'm sorry, but our live coverage of the draft will be done in German. So if you don't understand this language, I am sorry. Thanks for watching today, and see you next time.